Traveling the Vortex.
We join the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and reverse the polarity of electron flow to arrive at episode 584, the Axon Chainsaw Massacre. I'm Keith.
I'm Glenn.
And now I want chainsaws.
Too bad
That suddenly seems like a very effective method of cleaning up the tentacles. It's a different movie, of course, but yeah. I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn. How's everybody doing this week?
Not too bad.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Just
Some days I
okay.
have to think about it a little harder than others.
This week, we're doing an adversary archive on the Axos. We're revisiting them. We're doing the Feast of Axos, which is the Big Finish monthly range 144 with the Sixth Doctor and Evelyn and Thomas Brewster, continuing on from our last Thomas Brewster story. And then we're going to be reviewing the comic The Golden Ones by Jonathan Morris, which was in Doctor Who Magazine 425 through 428, and that starred the 11th Doctor. But as we do these in Doctor order, let's start with the Big Finish audio. Keith?
Axos calling Earth. Fist fuel system exhausted. Request immediate assistance. Many years ago, the vast space parasite Axos attempted to suck the planet Earth of its energy. Now it's all but forgotten. A dried-up husk, marooned in orbit, still stuck in the time loop it was placed in by the Earth's defender, the Doctor. Forgotten, that is, except for by space tourism billionaire Campbell Irons, who's hatched a plan to solve the world's energy crisis by reviving Axos and transmitting its power back to Earth. But the crew of the spaceship Windermere aren't alone aboard the parasite. The Doctor has returned to correct an error of decades past, and Axos is waiting.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed this one.
I did too.
Sean, you want to go first this week?
I was initially taken aback by right off the bat, the open, and the idea that we've launched a space mission up, even though ostensibly space tourism, although we don't use the T word, a space mission up to go investigate this thing that has been left in a temporal loop orbiting the planet by the Doctor from a previous adventure. And all of a sudden the floodgates opened and I went, oh man, how many things are still floating around up there waiting to be picked up? Like, wow, how has nobody revisited this idea before? And so now I kind of have this weird urge to go back through the archives and find out, did Unit or Torchwood pick it up, and if so, what was that mission like? And so right off the bat, I was on board with the premise. It was like, hello, yes, this is right up my alley. Thank you. And then it got good because the Sixth Doctor showed up,
and Evelyn,
which was always a pleasure. So yeah, just kind of right off the bat, it was a good story. It was well told. I had forgotten. I didn't get to my rewatch of Claws, and so I had forgotten a lot of it. And as they were explaining it's a parasite, it does this, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that. I remember that. So they kind of covered the bases for us, and the energy transfer and the Elon Musk wannabe,
So
which
that's something I found kind of fascinating about this story, because this was released in February of 2011, 13 years ago. And they've got this Elon Musk-like character, and they're talking about space tourism, And I'm like, ooh, that's eerily on the nose for 13 years ago.
Isn't it?
Little prescient.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of makes you wonder about the writers of the time travel stuff.
Well, the idea that it's also that he has a space tourism company and has used it to fund this expedition, but the idea that it's kind of the reverse of what happened in the claws of Axos. Instead of Axos coming to Earth, us going
It's
to
Earth,
Axos
Earth going to Axos, yeah.
and wanting the Axonite because it can do so much stuff. And the as much as I didn't like Campbell Irons and his motive and what he did in the story, his motivations were, I can't say I disagreed with him too much. I mean, he was coming to try to find a energy solution for the planet because it's having issues. That tale as old as time of running out of coal, etc., and polluting the planet. He saw a solution to try to solve it, and it didn't necessarily make him the bad guy, which I thought was a nice, clever twist to it.
Yeah, but making a deal with the devil, that never works out well.
This is true. Well, it makes me also wonder how much they really knew and how much were kept under wraps about what Axos really was and how it worked.
Well, that's a good point, because if you're...
If you only heard about Axos a long time ago and what it supposedly could do and didn't hear the true story of what Axos was, I could see why he would make that same decision and want to do the same thing.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, and Unit be in the position of making sure that, okay, do we say what this is so that people leave it alone, or do we not say what this is so people leave it alone? And you can kind of see them maybe erring on the side of not saying anything and kind of covering it up and being quiet about it. And then...
Especially since all the Axonite that was on Earth was destroyed when they got put in the time loop.
Right. Although the two people that came on the expedition had a lot of knowledge about this based on unit files. In fact, they knew who the doctor was when he showed up and all that stuff. So they were in on it, but I suppose, I mean, it's necessary because they have the expertise. But yeah, no, you're right. Being so long ago, maybe the gravity of the situation or the mavity of the situation wasn't grave enough.
Well, that's now I really am mad and kicking myself for not going back, because it's like I don't remember how big of a thing the Axos incursion was. I seem to remember that there were reporters, and if that's the case, then it was broadcast to at least the local, surrounding areas. It may not have gone out nationwide in Great Britain, but
well, it got at least worldwide because the UN found out about it and wanted it outside of the UK and was mad that the UK was trying to keep it to themselves.
Well,
at least that's what I remember when I rewatched it.
Yeah, no, you're right, but I don't know that because the UN knows about it that the world knows about it. I mean, it's still, I think it still stays within channels, and if I remember correctly, it seemed like it was just the UK and unit that knew about it, and that's where the struggle was. Well, and then I guess there was the American guy too, who was working for the FBI or the CIA or something. I can't remember. He was an American agent, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, but that also becomes a question of how much did he report back before he died.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, and so I don't know that it was a world thing. I don't think people knew about it. I think it was still kept under wraps. The minister was the one that was trying to broker the deal in order to get the Axons. So, and that was he was a UK minister, I think. I don't even think he was a unit.
No, yeah, he was a UK guy. So.
Yeah.
So if that was the case, then it would have been a lot easier to cover it up.
Right.
And you would have had to have had files. You would have had to have, which means they didn't probably know a lot about what was going on.
Yeah.
Versus if it had been a worldwide thing. Oh, remember that time when this happened.
And it becomes a question of how much of it was actually redacted of what they got.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. On the other hand,
which I'm willing to bet a lot.
On the other hand, and I'm not going to get ahead of us because I think we should finish this, but the Axos was at least known about from the early 21st century.
in part of Asia.
Right. I was no covering that up.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
I thought he did such a clever job of kind of retelling the Claws of Axel story in a new environment and a new situation with new motivations, but still having all of the similar roles, like Brewster being kind of the role of the master, working with Axos and, even just for his own gains. And the Campbell Irons kind of serving the role as the minister. I thought how they did all that was really clever and really well done.
I also sort of like the fact that with Brewster, I don't know that it's super clear, but at the end, it implies that he sort of wasn't going to go along with the Axos all along anyway, but they do a really good job of stringing you along and making you think, oh, this is totally a Thomas Brewster thing. Of course he's going to betray the Doctor. Of course he's going to side with the bad guys. But they're sort of at the end, it's almost implied that he just kind of was, number one, it was self-preservation, but number two, he never would have actually betrayed the Doctor and Evelyn ultimately, even though it sounds like, he's going down that road. So I thought that was kind of a neat little twist there at the end. Something the Master wouldn't do. The Master would only side with the Doctor when he, out of desperation, and his plan had completely failed. So
that's true. No other option.
Another thing that really, really, really got me about this one was knowing that at some point we're coming to the end of Evelyn's stories. And
yeah, let's talk about Evelyn.
I'm almost in tears because I'm thinking, no, this isn't how Evelyn goes out. No, this can't be, and the performance that Maggie Staples does is just so, the desperation in her voice, and even the other actors, Colin Baker and the other two, just in their knowing that, there's absolutely no way at a certain point to rescue her. And they're talking about her as though she's already, well, at least two of them are talking about her as though she's already dead. And she's like, I'm right here. I'm still here. And it's just, it was so heartbreaking because I thought, this can't be the way that Evelyn goes out. No, please, please.
and it was such a simple and innocent start to that.
Yes.
Well, I took those instructions as, instructions and pushed off.
Right.
It's like, oh God,
yep.
And it's such an Evelyn thing. It's just this very small, well, surely I can just, I can't quite reach now. It's 6 inches away. And we're all going, oh yeah. No.
That's what makes it
she
so
just keeps
just
describing how much further.
Away.
Yeah. And she just keeps describing how much further.
Yeah.
But I was glad she got picked up by the ship that got pulled back into the past.
Yeah, the deep fake on that was wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I was with you. I thought for sure is like, no, you read that wrong, Grandpa. Indigo, Wesley was only faking.
On utilizing the time bubble to save her the way they do, and how they use it the rest of the story, I thought was a really good idea.
Well,
too.
That's just it. It's very simple. It's a simple idea. And if it wasn't so clever, it would almost be a cheat. But they use it in such a way that it works really well.
And not just in this situation, in other situations as well.
Right.
Yeah, everything about this one worked for me. I was honestly a little worried that Thomas Brewster was going to
ruin it.
Well, I kind of feel like we're going to have the conversation about Thomas at some point. Because every time he showed up and we got a Thomas segment of the story, there was a little bit of I don't care. Go back to the interesting people, because I know Thomas is going to he's kind of doing the master thing, and he's going to betray him, and then he gets the he hears the doctor say, well, yeah, I'd leave it behind, even though he doesn't hear the whole thing.
Right.
And it's like, oh, yeah, of course you're going to be that guy. Oh, boy. All right. Do your thing. Oh, good. More Evelyn. Oh, no, she's in space. I mean, it just... So, yeah. Now, this is not... Due to the weird nature of the timelines, we have not been introduced to Thomas Brewster yet, right?
Correct. Yeah,
We've
we
not done that story?
we have not read The Haunting of Thomas Brewster,
Okay.
which is a
Because
But that's not a Big Finish release thing. That's just us not getting
right,
to that yet,
right, because we're doing the Evelyn stories, but that was an adventure earlier with the Fifth Doctor. So,
and I think the reason that we hadn't got to that is because there's a lot of setup with one of the other companions
Correct.
that we're trying to do in chronological order before we get to that one.
that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna hold off and reserve judgment on Thomas until I get his complete arc. But it's not looking favorable right now. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, and I have to give his. I mean, Evelyn has sympathy for him. She convinces the Doctor to take him back to his time. So I think he's a character out of time, and I think that ultimately he sort of redeems himself at the end of this one, enough so that I think it's justified that the Doctor just kind of places him back where he needs to be. So
Yes.
well, let's move on to the Golden Ones, which was the comic story in Doctor Who magazine.
In Japan, children are addicted to the new drink and TV show Garuda, a drink that makes them telepathic and golden.
Well, that's a terrible summary.
That's what's on TARDIS Wiki.
It doesn't give anything away for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
No, you're looking at it all wrong. This is a feature. It's not a problem.
2 features.
Well,
Obviously, this was an American soda company that unleashed this in Japan on an unwitting public.
from that description, you would think so, wouldn't you? Keith, you want to go first?
Yeah, this was a nice return to 11th Doctor that I didn't really
I knew you'd like
expect. Although I have to say, I didn't know that was Amy at first. I was like, who is this new companion? This is
Same.
not when has Amy ever worn pigtails like
Same,
that? Come
yeah.
on.
Same.
That is not within Amy's style or look.
When he called her Amy, and it
takes him a while to call her Amy too. It's
Yeah, it was
almost
long
rushing
into
in.
In
It's
fact,
like, who is this girl?
Martha gets a name drop before Amy does.
Yeah.
So he finally says Amy, and I went, what? Well, okay, red hair, legs. Oh, honey, you tried. Okay, and then my brain literally tried to retcon it, going, well, I could kind of see Amy trying to go for the Japanese schoolgirl thing because she's got the skirt on and now the pigtails, and maybe there was a previous adventure in this run where they were attending school in Japan, and the more I looked at her, the more I went, you really can't make this work. It's just, I know we don't want to harp on the art, but yeah, that was.
I thought the art in this one was really good. I think the characterization, the characterization of Amy, I think was a little off, but I thought it was fine. There's actually a story before this, but I think it takes place in India, so no, you can't even use that. You can't even use that.
Apparently, the artist just couldn't do long hair like that and needed to do pigtails.
I can't fault the, that's
no
just it. The
it.
thing is, though, I can't fault the artist for doing that because he's giving Amy a different look, and so I think it's okay because then it just becomes this stagnant. We're looking at the same person the same way all the time. I mean, we've seen Amy with her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and we've seen Amy with her hair pulled up, albeit in a kissogram outfit, but a police officer or a constable. So we've seen her hairstyle different ways. This was just another way to do it. I can't fault the guy for it. I think it was fine. And I kind of agree with, was it Keith you that said he was kind of going for the maybe the Japanese schoolgirl look. So she may have been, that may have been her intent. She was trying to fit in with the populace. I didn't have a problem with it. Didn't take me out of the story anyway. So that's a bonus.
An initial.
Yeah,
I was able to
at the
ignore it
beginning,
after
I had a moment of, okay, I think this is Amy, but I'm not sure. So,
The story itself is, the beginning very much invoked the puppet episode of Angel, where the kids are hooked to a TV show character for a various reason, and they're sucking life essence, essentially.
Yeah.
It gave that vibe very much.
No,
but
very
I thought
much
it was
so.
a clever, interesting approach, especially with the soda aspect of it, of trying to take over the world for Axos as opposed to the way they had been doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
I applaud the author for taking the Axos in a new direction. I think what he tried to do was a solid direction and a good evolution of the characters.
I think what it doesn't do is it doesn't give me a reason for how it got out of the even the doctor even asked, but it doesn't give me a good reason for how it got out of the time loop that it had been trapped, that he had trapped it in. And so I kind of wanted a little more from it that way. But the other thing that it's very much a comic story, because there's a lot that's done here that could really only be done as a comic. Even on TV, this would have
building as Axos itself. Yeah.
Even on TV, this would have felt a little hollow, because there's not a lot going on besides running from one place to the next. And that's okay in this comic, especially because it's very visual, it's very action-packed, it's exciting, it's fun to see, them going from one place to the other. But there's not a lot of substance in it, and you could almost cut out a good chunk of the middle and still have a pretty decent story. I don't know that it needed to go on for, what was it, 3 parts? No, 4 parts.
4.
I'm not sure it needed to go on for 4 parts, but I was enjoying it the whole time, so I'm fine with it being 4 parts. But there's not a lot of substance. There's not a lot of the doctor. I mean, the doctor figures a lot of it out, or is discovering it in the first one, and then once the big reveal at the end, it's basically just running from one place to the next until he ends up getting. And the other thing that I felt was a little bit of a jump was, if you're gonna drag this out, give me a reason for the doctor getting to Amy so quick and expecting her to have gotten out of that building on herself. I think that kind of got left behind in the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest weight of it is the characterization of the unit soldier.
Yeah.
That kind of keeps along with him the whole time, and she kind of grounds the story and gives it its emotional weight.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it really would be a hollow story.
I'll tell you, the body count in this too is insane.
Well, at least they acknowledge it at the end.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Although how they clean that mess up, I don't. I'm not sure.
And thankfully, it was all off page, really. I mean, we see people get zapped, but we don't. It's not until they really talk about it that you hear.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the kids going through the streets and pretty much offing just about everybody they came in contact. You're right. A lot of that is done off page, and you see bodies, kind of after. But a lot of the, with the confrontation with the soldiers, there's a lot of that. And I did appreciate the fact that we went to the spaghetti monster Axos rather than the golden kid Axos for the second part of the comic, because then you don't have the imagery of shooting at kids, even though they weren't being able to, do anything. They were ineffective against them. You didn't have to deal with that imagery through the whole comic. So that was kind of a clever choice to go to the other form of the Axos.
Yeah, I agree. I thought both of these stories really kind of made me appreciate Axos a little bit more than the TV show did.
Yeah.
And that's something that you kind of, honestly, if you're going to bring back something in a different format, that's kind of what you hope for.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Certainly. So the one other thing that I think gets left as a mystery is the little girl that came in and saves Amy and the head military gal. Kind of gets left out there, and part of that is us, jumping around. There is a collection that this was released in, along with a lot of other Doctor Who stories, called The Child of Time, which sometime we'll revisit. This will be one of those stories, but there is an overgoing arc with that girl, that mysterious girl. So
I wondered if that was the case while reading it.
And I don't even think the first two stories in that arc that sets her up would have done us any good anyway. We still wouldn't. I think that's kind of because that story arc goes through so many comics, we wouldn't have gotten much more to know about her beyond what we got to know about her. So good stuff, though. I really appreciated both of these stories. All right, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule? All right, well, you can find us on our website, travelingthevortex.com. If you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it by becoming a patron subscriber or patron supporter. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to the podcast. And when you do that, give us a holler, and we will give us a holler. We will read that review out on the show. That helps bump us up in the ratings and recommendations, gets us out there a little further. And then make sure you join in the conversation on our listeners forum on Facebook. William's been pretty active there, so hop over there and share your ideas and your thoughts. Anything else before we close this one? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.